Do you have I think we talked about this last time, and it's again, as kind of we went through COVID and whatnot. A lot of I'm assuming your viewership skyrocketed, but personally, for me, if I recall, and friends that were stuck and trapped on the island during that COVID period of time, it was the cats, and it also
and
was
the shirts.
But it was also your the way you delivered the news in that Australian sarcastic type of delivery, which it was quite witty as well, instead of so static and bland, which the news can be.
Brendan, that's really interesting because I naturally just sort of do that type of delivery, and it's a bit sarcastic and sardonic, and to Australians that seems quite natural. However, Americans in particular, Asians, they think that you're just being rude. And when I had my co-host, Jay, and I would sort of say something, "Oh, what are you wearing today?" People would say, "Oh my God, you're so rude to Jay." But I will always say to people, if you know an Australian and they're not being sarcastic and rude to you, watch out, because they're not your friend. It's just our humour, our vibe, and it's never been intentional. But I think in the future, one thing I will do is just go back to that and just be natural. Don't try and not offend people. Just be natural and let people figure it out for themselves. You get to the stage where you start analysing every word you're saying and measuring things before you open your mouth. And that is sort of sad. I think one thing that YouTube has proven, and TV, I suppose, in the days before then, is that people can pick you up when you're not being absolutely pure and intuitive. And so I think in the future, if I'm going to be doing YouTube and stuff, I'll make sure I just stick to being me and not trying to be somebody I'm not.
Did the board ever come to you and say, "Hey, Tim, you gotta take it a step back, less sarcasm, don't kind of keep this more"? And we did talk about that, where you're saying we're trying to go down the middle now. We're not trying to go left or right.
Yeah, well, I think that sort of comment was us just panicking to the responses we got about various things. I'm happy to talk about that more, the comment section. But it's not as if the board is a group of people that sit and read everything and watch everything and go and shake their finger at you. Only very recently has there sort of been a directive from higher up in the company to take it easy on the TAT. The Tourism Authority of Thailand came under our spotlight about 18 months ago when they started basically sprouting nonsense, saying, there's going to be 8 million people and they're going to bring in all this money. And I started fact-checking them. And all you had to do was get a calculator out and go, 8 million people divided by... That's not right. That's not even possibly right. And I was very critical of them, say, when Phuket started the sandbox. Remember the sandbox? Yep. First time the borders would open, there was quarantine. And
we had some sandboxers on the podcast. I brought them on, but... Yeah.
There you go. So people wanted to come back, and the sandbox was a process by which people could safely re-enter Thailand. But the TAT at the time was saying, Thailand is open, come back, and everything's open and everything's fantastic. And they were telling all the businesses, open up, the tourists are going to be flooding back. So Brendan comes down and opens his cafe in Ratutit Road in Patong, and 3 people come and he gets annoyed. So I thought that the TAT were acting very irresponsibly, and their enablers, by pushing this narrative that suddenly everything's sort of back to normal. Well, here we are, a year later. It was July the 1st they started on 2021. They started the sandbox. Here we are a year later, and it's only now the tourism numbers are starting to creep up, but we're still, in July 2022, about 80% down on the number of tourists that used to come here. So Thailand and Phuket specifically have got a long way to go. So I'm critical of these tourism associations pushing an over-optimistic narrative that is not realistic. I think people want to know what's actually happening. They don't want all the propaganda and the fluff and the fireworks. They want to know what's actually happening.